We're talking about the Maine Democratic Senate primary, since Elizabeth Warren has made an endorsement in it, and a ballot initiative, a potential one, that could cut the state income tax from 5% to 4%. Adam, good morning.
Mark, good to see you.
So we're going to start with Senator Elizabeth Warren endorsing Oysterman Graham Platner, a political newcomer, and passing over Governor Janet Mills in the Democratic Senate primary race in Maine. These are two very different candidates, right?
They are. One is the candidate of the establishment, Janet Mills. She has been endorsed by Chuck Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand, among others. Graham Platner is the candidate of Bernie Sanders, who's endorsed him. He's now the candidate of Elizabeth Warren. He's been endorsed by Ruben Gallego. He is seen as the more aggressively economic populist of the candidates. And he's, as you said, he's a newcomer. He's a fresh face, which I think there's a real hunger for on the Democratic side after losing the midterms, after losing in 2024, heading into the midterms. I think Democrats really want new faces that can get voters to the polls. And the polls show that Platner is actually running ahead of Mills at this point in time.
And, what is it right now that makes it so important that for Elizabeth Warren to be endorsing him?
You're asking why did this particular endorsement come out at this point in time?
Yes.
Well, Graham Platner, as people who've been paying attention to the race know, has some baggage. He had social media posts surface that he wrote a little more than a decade ago. He says he was in a very dark place when he wrote them after military service, maybe dealing with some depression, PTSD, but they were offensive posts. He also got a tattoo. This came to light, which essentially was a skull and crossbones tattoo, calling to mind the Nazi symbol used to represent the SS. Graham Platner has said he had no idea what the origins of that image was, that he got it, the tattoo, after a night of drinking in Croatia. He has since had the two covered up. But in terms of why Elizabeth Warren is endorsing Graham Platner right now, Janet Mills just unveiled her first attack ad in this race, and it consists of women looking at an iPad and reading comments that Graham Platner made on social media that they deem very offensive. Let's take a listen to that ad.
Did you know Graham Platner wrote that women worried about rape need to, quote,
not get so up they wind up having sex with someone they don't mean to.
It's disgusting.
Platner wrote to avoid rape, women should, quote,
act like an adult for sake.
Graham Platner, seriously.
We blame the victim. That's a horrible thing to say.
Disqualifying. I have not.
Yeah, and so there's just a number of, these aren't the actual women, I don't think.
No. These aren't women who he was writing to. These are people who are being shown the comments that he wrote at the time.
Right.
So there's a lot of negative fodder for Janet Mills to work with. Platner again has said he's disavowed these comments. He said he doesn't recognize the person who wrote them. He's disavowed that tattoo, as I mentioned, as well. But this is ripe fodder for a political attack ad. And I think, while correlation is not necessarily causation, the fact that we have Elizabeth Warren, who is perhaps the best known economic populist woman in the Senate, coming out and endorsing Platner right when this attack ad hits, it looks to me like an attempt to play defense as Janet Mills goes on offense.
So that's giving me the feeling that Elizabeth Warren thinks there's something that Graham Platner embodies that's really important about changing the direction of the Democratic Party, which is something we've all been talking about.
I think you're right, and I think for her it is his unfettered economic populism, which is very much in a Warren-esque, Bernie Sanders-esque mold. Tax the rich, fight corporate power, use the money from taxing the rich to help the lives of ordinary men and women in the U.S. So I think she sees him as someone who, on a policy front, is very much squarely in line with the fights that she wants to wage and win in the next Congress. So that's why I think she's, to some extent, sticking her neck out here, although she's not really, she's not up for re-election. She's not vulnerable. I'm not sure there's a big opportunity cost for her with this endorsement. So that's something else to bear in mind.
And next, you and I have talked about ballot questions a lot, and we have something going on in Beacon Hill right now. This week, Katie Lannon, our State House reporter, says that leaders there are acknowledging a potential ballot question that would cut the state's income tax, as I said, 5% to 4%, looks very likely to pass, and that could blow some holes in the state's budget. Here's House Speaker Ron Mariano speaking about it this week.
I think it's going to pass, and it creates a whole set of other problems for us that we have to deal with.
So he's sounding very resigned there. It's really
He's sounding very resigned and very unenthused about the direct democracy process that lets voters every few years take lawmaking into their own hands, which we know he and other legislative leaders are not super excited about. The projections that I've seen is that this would mean maybe $5 million in lost revenue. I believe that Governor Healey's current budget proposal is $67 billion. So it's not, it wouldn't remove half of the budget, for example, but it would remove a substantial chunk and force some big sacrifices to be made on Beacon Hill. And I think they're just starting to wrap their brains around how that would work.
Yeah. And again, this exemplifies something that we have talked about a few times now. It's like, when you have a ballot question and you get even just good polling on it, all of a sudden you've got a seat at the table.
All of a sudden you do. By the way, I need to offer an instant correction.
Yes.
Governor Healey's budget for the next fiscal year is just under $63 billion, not 67.
Okay.
So this $5 billion loss represents an even greater share than I suggested a moment ago.
Yeah. So it's serious, and they're just going to have to deal with it.
And in terms of the negotiating that can go on between people who've managed to get a ballot question this far and lawmakers who might not want to do everything the ballot question would do if it becomes law, Speaker Mariano said there have not been serious negotiations, and his Ways and Means Chair Aaron Michaelwitz have said there haven't been serious negotiations about some sort of a compromise on this one. You get the impression from what they've said that the two sides have talked, but that the legislative leaders don't really see a compromise as a viable possibility.
And just brief mention, another thing that caught our interest this week, we had the first state senator of Cambodian American descent in the country sworn in at the State House, Vanna Howard, of Lowell, not surprisingly.
Yep.
And
the epicenter of the Cambodian community.
Yes. And you and I were talking, just the other day about this. I was saying, it hasn't always been clear sailing for the Cambodian American community in this state when it comes to politics.
No, it hasn't. I mean, a little more than a decade ago, there was a legal action brought against the city asserting that their at-large mechanism of electing city councilors diluted the power of people of color to elect candidates that they wanted elected. Vanna Howard's election does not come directly out of the resolution to that case, which was basically to create district seats as well as at-large seats like we have here in Boston. But I think it reflects a bigger conversation that's been going on about Cambodian American political empowerment. Worth noting, the Republican she ran against, Sam Mees, is also Cambodian American.